to the topic. Patrick is he's an author and a game enthusiast. And he's staying in New York right now in the center of all the COVID-19 madness, and we've just been talking online. And what I wanted to do really quickly was just get some of his opinions on things, see how the book is coming, and check up on the guy. He's a good guy, and he likes wrestling too. I don't know how that came about in our discussions, but if you remember from the day I used to talk about wrestling, so we've got that there too. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing all right. So, can anybody else yell? Can you hear him okay? Go ahead and say something, Patrick. How you doing?
I'm doing very good. Benjamin Johnson, the man behind games such as Origins and Red Dead Redemption.
Okay, good. I like your Macho Man voice there. There was just a Macho Man meme going around that. Oh God, how did it go? I'll have to repost it, but I realized how crazy he looked all the time, and
Oh yeah.
I don't know what he was on or if that was the mode he was trying to express, but as a very little kid, I just thought that he was intense, and now I look back and I'm like, man, that guy was on something.
Yeah, there was definitely like cocaine involved in that entire process. But you know, the thing is, though, too, you talk to a lot of professional wrestlers that worked with him. He would meticulously plan his matches before.
Right.
And we're talking like matches with like 100 like events during the match, and he would go to like the guy that he was wrestling and go, all right, what was 47? And the guy would go, deep arm drag. And he's like, no, stupid, it was an atomic drop, come on. And he would memorize an entire match in his head before the match took place.
That's
and
crazy.
The people that he enjoyed working with were the ones that could like actually keep up with him. Like Ricky Steamboat was one of those guys, Diamond Dallas Page. Those are some of the people that he had the best matches with because they used to do the same thing. They would tape themselves and they, really wanted to bring a lot out of the experience. So, yeah, he was super, super intense.
Man, that's crazy. I really like and that's one of the things I liked about wrestling, the artistry and theatrics of it. It was just on another level, and I don't think people really don't get that what's going on and how well put together that whole process is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like video games a little bit when you think about it. People just look at the finished product, and they don't really think about all the things that go into the finished product and how all those little things along the way can make something so special. And that's like one of the biggest reasons why I started the journey that I'm on now.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, how did now you're an author and game enthusiast, but how did exactly you get on that journey? Because I actually haven't found that part of your history, how you got started.
So I've been writing about video games for about 15 years. Probably a little bit longer than that, but I don't count any of that stuff, like the AOL, AOL group posts and the GameSpot and IGN forum, and all that stuff. But I was
right.
Since I was a little kid, I was always curious about games and how they were developed. It wasn't until I was about probably 21, 1920 that I started writing for places and getting paid. So that's kind of like the beginning of the journey. But I was always like,
wait, hold on. You said 19 and 20. So, did you go to school at all in college?
Yeah, I have a master's degree. But I didn't start college right away. I was gonna take a year off, and then I ended up getting in a pretty serious car accident, and then I was like that 18-year-old kid in the neighborhood with a cane. So I was confused for a pimp, but I wasn't. I was in bands for a little while, and then probably around 19, almost 20, I had a conversation with my dad, and it was basically like, all right, you either go to college or you get the hell out of the house. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go to college. And then I just took to college so well because I was a little bit older, a little bit more focused, a little more mature. Okay. And I just jumped right in.
Now, was this in New York?
Yeah, but I'm a Brooklyn guy, born and raised.
Okay. So born and raised in Brooklyn, you went through this terrible accident, but you end up getting in school. Anyway, what did you end up studying?
Journalism. I have an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree,
Okay.
and a master's degree in journalism.
Okay. Yeah, my sister was into journalism. She actually went to Texas Southern to study, and
Nice.
she got me into actually a lot of fantasy reading, just the whole. I don't want to say the nerd side of things. I was into computers already, but she was definitely into fantasy. She got me into The Hobbit, that kind of things like that.
So good.
So yeah, that side of things, and understanding how to read magazines and read media, she really pulled me into that. So I definitely, I definitely can relate to that vibe. Having someone in the family like that, and
Absolutely.
but yeah, it really opens up a lot of things. You start to see things differently. Once again, like wrestling, you start to look at it in a different way. So now you're doing this writing, and you've got this affinity for wrestling and things. And how does that? Naturally, I suppose it kind of leads into gaming. If you're into wrestling, but did any certain thing happen, or just kind of build up, or what?
I liked wrestling in terms of it being, I consider it art. It's artistry. There's a story being told in the ring. I like video games the same exact way ever since I was a little kid. I enjoyed playing games. I enjoyed playing games differently than other people. I enjoyed playing games like Zelda and going all the way to the edge of the map and seeing what happens, and trying to blow up every part of the map and see what was there, and looking for Easter eggs and things like that. So when I started studying journalism, and I knew that all of a sudden I had the opportunity to interview the people that created those experiences for me. It was like a whole new door open. So I was editor-in-chief of my first college newspaper, and I was like, you know what? We're going to send letters to like Atlas and Sega and Rockstar and Sony, and we're going to see if we can get some free games to review.
Huh.
And they started sending us, like Atlas. I remember Atlas started sending us games.
Atlas.
And,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got like Steamboat Chronicles and Persona and a whole bunch of games. And I told, because there's a community college newspaper, so you're only there for 2 years. And I told the team that I left, I was like, do not fuck this up, because these guys will send you games forever as long as you do the right thing. If you're just collecting games and you don't write about them, then they're going to stop sending you games. And so I made sure that when I left, I told Atlas and a couple of the other companies that I was going to another college, and I was going to write about their games for the next college paper, and they said yeah. So the other college newspaper was like stoked. They're like, holy shit, we just brought this guy in. We don't know him from a hole in the wall.
Right.
And he's working with video game companies, But
so
the other paper, they stopped reviewing the games, and they lost the agreement. So
okay.
that's kind of how it all started with video games.
Okay, yeah. So I guess you just kept on with that, regardless of whoever dropped out or whatever. You just started. You started contacting these companies, and now you continued.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's funny is, I was the editor-in-chief of the CIS Times, which was a Computer Information Systems Times. It was a little newsletter magazine that we put out at Florida A&M University.
Nice.
So when I first got there, it was kind of janky, and I was like, "Yo, you've got this tool, this outlet. You can make these. You can have something worthwhile in here." And they're like, "Well, yeah, but nobody knows the publishing software." And they had some old version of something, but there was a computer in the computer lab that had Microsoft Publisher on it. And I said, "Do we have this? I don't even know how to use it, but can we use this?" And they're like, "Dude, no one's touching that little newsletter." At the time, it was just like one photocopied sheet of paper that was like folded in half, and they would just hand it out saying, "Hey, there's a programming competition. Please don't forget to log out of your computer. It was really a goofy little one-page flyer that they put out. And we turned it into a complete magazine. And we used that magazine to actually, as you said, do interviews and host, discussions. So when these newsletters went out, you could see the instant effect it had, where people just knew information. There was information on, of course, the bulletin boards, but having an actual newsletter was a lot different. It really made a difference. So, very interesting stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, those are some of the most important experiences of my life because, it not only gave me the opportunity to be as creative as I wanted to be and to be in control of something, but it also allowed me to work with other people and to kind of see where I could take, my dreams in a way. And I did crazy stuff for the community college newspaper. The first one, I interviewed the guy that played Master Shake on Octane Hunger Force. I interviewed Diamond Dallas Page and Harley Race and guys on the Mets like David Rice. And I did really cool stuff. And I was just like, I'm just a student. I'm like a nobody. Imagine when I get a degree, what I could do. So yeah, man, those are the beginning. Those are the foundation days. Those are some of the greatest days of my career. I mean, I'm sure you kind of feel the same way that those light bulbs went off and they're still on.
Definitely, totally. So, my iPad just gave me an announcement of some sort, and I'm not sure if you still got your computer open or whatever you're working on. Can you post a comment? I'm not sure how the feed is looking. Or someone could just post a comment and let me know that the feed is still moving along okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you're still on. Yeah, can you hear me? So.
All right, so.
Yep, we're still flowing.
All right, it was just a little choppy for a second, so I'm wondering how the final recordings are going to come out because sometimes that can be a little weird, but that's how we learn, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, so really quick, for those of you who aren't familiar, the book series that he's running, and I'll do a backwards version of this later, but it's called The Mind Behind the Games. It's a series that Patrick has started creating based on the history that he was just telling you, and it's pretty intense. I don't know how to describe it. When I heard about it, I liked the idea, but when I got the actual book in my hand, I realized how deep he had gone in some of these stories. I mean, these are, you just got pages on pages of interviews and images of the old video game content and some of the covers. And this is a totally untouched part of history that we're delving into here with this book series. So, I don't want this to run on too long, and we'll do a more proper interview later. But really quickly, just tell us, encapsulate how this whole Mind Behind the Games thing got this turned into a book or a series.
Oh, man. It's controversial. I'm probably going to get in trouble, but I don't care. Whatever. It's the truth. So my wife was 5 months pregnant, and I just had one of those moments. I was kind of sitting on my couch, and I was like, I've done a lot of cool things, but I'm there's so many other things that I wanted to do, and I just knew that when my daughter was born, that she was going to become my prime focus. My job as her advocate was the most important job that I was going to have for the rest of my life. And I need to accomplish a little bit more so I can be the person that she needs me to be as a father, as a role model. So I'm just I need to do something.
Yeah.
So originally my idea was to continue to build the journalism program in the college that I teach at, that I've taught at for 14 years. And I pitched a multimedia journalism course to the director of the program.
Okay.
And he was like, no. And I've taught it at other colleges. I'm the syllabus, they're already written. The syllabi is already written. I'm this could be great for our program. Nope. So I was like, all right, so then it was just like an instinctual just comeback. I was like, well, you know what? Then I'm going to write a book. And he was like, then go write a book. So I went home and I sat in my man cave, and I'm just like, I am going to write a book. That's like something that I've always wanted to do. I'm surrounded by 3,000. I have over 3,000 games, and over 30 consoles. And I'm just looking around and I'm just like, I know who made Yard's Revenge. I know who made Mutant League Football. I know who made King's Bounty. I know who made Wonder Boy and Monster Land. I know who made Toe Jam and Earl. But how many other people do?
Yeah, yeah.
Like the stories behind these games are just as important as the games themselves. And interviews for me has always been my favorite thing to do as a journalist.
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know what? Those 5 or 6 games that I told you, I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out. I'm going to find these developers online. I'm going to pitch them. And if I can get half of them to get back to me, then I have enough to start a book. And then I'm going to use those 2 or 3 chapters to pitch to publishers and try and get a book deal. So within 2 weeks, Michael Menheim, Howard Scott Warshaw, John Van Keegan, Greg Johnson, all those guys, they all got back to me. So all 6 got back to me.
Excellent.
And then it was just then we were off to the races. That was Halloween of 2016, and by Thanksgiving, I had all 6 written, and I had a book deal in place, and as they say, the rest is history. So
yeah, it's interesting. I definitely like that. How open and accessible a lot of game developers are.
absolutely.
I remember when I was first, trying to get my name out there and meet up with a lot of industry people. I was sending out things to Midway, and Midway actually contacted me back, and it was one of their secretaries, and they said, "Hey, you had some questions you wanted to talk or whatever," and I said, "Yeah, I did." I'm like, "Okay, well, if you want to call back or whatever, we'll have someone call you who can answer your questions." And I had sent them just a letter. I was typing up letters, and I figured that was easier to get through to people than email.
Absolutely.
You see an email, you're just like, okay, whatever. Hey, thanks, kid, or whatever. But I wanted to know if I sent a letter, along with my credentials and everything. It seemed a little more official, so that was my little hack at the time. And the secretary was like, "Well, hey, if you want to call, just hang around for a little while, and we'll get somebody to contact you." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, someone's going to answer my question. Interesting."
Nice.
So I hung up the phone, went back to what I was doing, and then I got a call, and it was Mark Trammell. And when I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Hi, Mark Trammell from Midway," and I'm thinking, because I'm not connecting that it's him on the phone, but I'm thinking I know this name, and if I would have expected the call, I would have said, "Okay, this is wild," but I'm kind of like, "Wait, who is this guy?" So at first I'm like, okay, Mark. And I totally forgot what the conversation was about, but I remember asking him about how they use programming and what could be done, and what their job situation was like at the time for careers, because I was in the process of going to 3DO, but I was still talking to other companies.
Yeah. Oh,
and
that's great.
And yeah, so we just had this conversation about game development and programming, and I think at some point halfway through, I was flipping through my names, and I'm like, no, that's Mark Trammell. So it kind of.
Oh my God.
It was just really weird that this was one of my first conversations with somebody in the game industry, and I found out that I could just contact people, and it was really bizarre because I can still do that now. I found the guy's name in a magazine, looked him up on Instagram, and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he was just like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And we just started a great conversation, and it's really bizarre, and I don't know how many people do that, but I don't know if I'm letting any cat out of the bag, and people are going to start, not responding to randoms anymore.
No.
But the fact that you've put that into a book is really great. So I'll definitely put a link up to your the site or the link of your choice or whatever to this video with this video. But speaking of things happening soon, I definitely want to jump in and interject and say congratulations. Right now, you are about to. Um, your wife is about to have a baby.
Mhm.
Now, apparently, this what interview wasn't going to happen before, but now you got a little window of time where it's happening. Um,
Yeah.
you're having a coronavirus baby or a corona
Yeah. Yes.
era
Yes.
baby. Uh,
Mhm.
that must be a little scary, huh? Or I don't know. How
Yeah.
are you feeling?
It's like honestly like it's been crazy because the laws have changed a couple of times, and at first we didn't know if I was going to be able to be there in the delivery room, and being there for my first child, my daughter who's 3, is
Mm-hmm.
one of the greatest experiences of my life. You know, watching her come out and cutting the umbilical cord and being the first person to hold her,
Awesome.
like, yeah, and the fact that I thought I was going to get robbed of that experience, like I was beyond like livid, and I signed a whole bunch of petitions and wrote a whole bunch of newspapers and news stations and stuff like that, and they just changed the law, so like it's back to normal. But like some things have changed. So like yesterday, like we had a little bit of a scare. We thought that she was ready to go, and so we went to the hospital and we were there for a couple of hours. But like they while she was in triage, they put me in like the waiting room, and I wasn't there with her. So it's like we were texting back and forth, and I was just like, this is so different from the way it was before. But at the same time, they're trying to keep everybody safe, and it's just it's crazy. It's like you watch on the news about, you hear all these things about how bad New York is, but I mean, it's getting better, but New York was really bad for a really long time, for about a month.
Right.
Like New York was just bad. It was like that YouTube song, like the streets have no name. It was just you just want to run outside and scream, and because everyone was stuck in the house, no one was going outside, and
Yeah,
it was just crazy.
I don't know how many people understand that density of people in New York, and I've been to New York a couple times, and
Mhm.
I loved it. I love the energy. I love um, the way people talk and have conversations. Um,
Mhm.
great example. I was in a random diner on some random street. It was a really small place. People filed in, got their food, walked out. There are a couple seats to sit down, whatever. But I walked in, got like a little eggs and bacon and something, and I was with my friend, and we're sitting down, and we just said, "Man, this is like some basic shit, but it's actually really well done. What is with these New York restaurants?" And we were talking to ourselves. Some guy like a table and a half over who was standing in line holding a newspaper was like, "Yeah, it's because we don't tolerate bullshit."
Mhm.
And I love that. I started laughing. I was like, no, I kind of get it. I love that. So I definitely have love for the city and the vibe. And when I'm out here in LA or, the LA area, people are like, what's New York like? And I'm thinking, imagine all of LA County in a city the size of Long Beach. And they just stop and kind of stare into the sky and can't understand it. It just blows their mind. They don't get how efficient and ordered and close that city is. And so with us out here, the social distancing thing is interesting because we can there's a lot of space and we can kind of still, walk outside, get on a bike and or whatever and not really run into anybody.
Mhm.
And you're dealing with a whole nother situation where that's
Oh yeah, it's
simply not.
completely different. I mean, and just to put into perspective, like I don't even know if I told you this, but like I live in a 3-family home with my wife's family, and it's like her uncle lives on the first floor, and her cousins live on the second floor, and we live on the third floor. It's 2 bedrooms, nice size for us and stuff like that. But her uncle on the first floor got the virus, and then no one could take care of him, so his daughter had to come downstairs from the second floor and take care of him. So then she got the virus. So now imagine how I feel
Yeah.
with a 3-year-old daughter and a pregnant wife, and we share a washing machine, his basement. So it's like pretty like for a while, man. It was pretty intense, like having to go downstairs with like gloves on and a mask just to do your wash.
Yeah.
You know, and like my daughter is super close with their daughter who's like 6 months younger, and they weren't able to see each other for like 6 weeks. So yeah, man. And all during this entire time, I'm finishing one book. I'm wrapping up another book. I'm starting another book. I'm teaching full time. So it's like, it's freaking crazy. It was. I'm telling you, like the last 6 weeks were pretty intense.
Yeah, and a baby on the way.
And a baby on the way. Yeah.
And you took the time. And you took the time out to do this. I totally appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No, it's all good, man. So it's the least that I could do. I mean, you've done so much for me. You took a gamble on me. I was just some guy that messaged you and emailed you. You know, and what you've given me is so much more than I'll ever be able to give you. You know, so I super appreciate it.
Did I just pull a Mark Trammell randomly?
Absolutely. Oh man.
That's funny.
It's funny that you tell me that too, because you're not the first person that I've heard a story that they called up Midway and they got Mark Trammell. You know. So a guy that he bought my first 2 books, and he pre-ordered the third one. His name's Shane Stein. Super, really, really cool guy. He called up Midway at like 11 years old to bitch about like NBA Jam, and he was like, I got some ideas on how we can make NBA Jam better, blah, blah, blah. And they put him on the phone with Trammell, and he talked to Trammell for like 15 minutes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's comedy.
Yep. So, and I've heard great stories about Trammell, man, that like Midway was like a big frat party back in the day, and Trammell was like the king of the frat, you know? So, and he's a super nice guy. Like, I interviewed him for the first book, and just super nice guy, and he's kind of like a family man and like reserved now, but you could tell he was a fucking party animal back in the day. Yeah,
that's weird. I never got much of the Midwest gaming scene when I was coming up. I mean, when I say I didn't get it, I didn't have any connection to it. We were, you know, I was in the Bay Area, so Google was coming up, Napster, Yahoo, the Silicon Valley, all the Silicon Valley cats. Then, you know, there was 3DO, Rockstar, Sega, Fox Interactive. All these companies were, you know, kind of a stone's throw from each other. At my first job at 3DO, I remember we went to a Toys R Us to pick up one of those buy 2 get 1 free game deals, and we were just grabbing games for the studio, and we hear some people in like the next aisle over talking about what they're going to do with their game. We're like, well, I don't know if we should just axe that level or get some new people on it to try to fix it out, because it's got real problems, man. And they're just like talking about this unreleased game, and we're game developers in the next aisle over, and we're like elbowing each other, like, hey, wait a minute, are they talking about, who are they? And you know, my friend says, nah, I saw him, he's got a Sega jacket on. It's like, really? You know, so
that's great.
They didn't say anything really incriminating, but they walked around the corner and saw us and changed discussion anyway. So, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was just really weird having all of us together in a small area like that while we're all just working on, you know, PlayStation games, to some Dreamcast developers out there. Yeah, it was just really crazy.
Awesome.
So yeah, the Midwest scene, I didn't know too much about, and you know, the couple studios out in New York and Austin, didn't know too much about either. What I'm basically saying is I only knew about the scene I was in, which was the Bay Area scene.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was definitely good times. And also, you said you're teaching still, so I guess you're doing everything online and just.
Yeah, everything's online. I'm a college professor for 14 years, and I've done the online thing for probably like 12. So I'm completely comfortable teaching online. It's been hard because most of my students haven't been, you know, properly trained to take online classes, and it's a lot different. It's a lot more independent, and it's a lot harder to prove to your professor that you know what you're talking about when you're not in class. You know. So I've had to get really inventive, doing like audio lessons and video lessons, and giving them plenty of stuff to read, and posting at all different times of the day. just to kind of keep them, because they get an email every time I update. So, I mean, the classes are only supposed to be like 3 hours a week, but I think we're spending far more time, like this semester, on this stuff, because like the stream of consciousness like never ends. And I feel like when I have to sit down and do like an audio or a video lesson for an hour, after like 10 minutes, I'm just like, I'm done. I've said everything that I need to say. So I'll stop the recording, send it off to them, and then like 3 hours later, I'll be like, oh shit, I didn't mention this, and then I'll do another audio lesson or whatever. I think it's better than you know, the way online teaching was before.
Okay.
But it's just it's been an adjustment. It doesn't necessarily bother me, because I mean, I know so many professors, man, that are just, they're losing their shit. They don't want to do it this way. And then the thing is too, there's like a paper trail now, you know? Because like there's a lot of college professors that have tenure that kind of put their feet up on their desk and they talk for an hour, but they're not really teaching anybody anything,
Right.
you know? So now you're online and everything's being documented, and you got to be on your shit. You got to be on your game, and some of them can't deal with that.
So is it shaking out the people who have just been sliding along? And I don't just mean teachers, but students as well.
I compared this. I was talking to another professor about this the other day, and I compared this to kind of like one of those cataclysmic events, like in DC or Marvel Comics, like every like 15 years, where like a whole shitload of characters die that like, you know, nobody was reading anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mean of me in a way, but it's just like, as an educator, your most important job is to adapt to the times. You cannot be an old dinosaur. You've got to take the patches off of your elbow, you know, the patches off of your jacket, you know. And, and you got to just, you know, it's like, I'm 36, I've been teaching for 14 years, and still, like, to this day, I'll walk into a classroom and people will be like, are you the professor? And I'm like, you have to ask me? And they're like, oh, well, you look like a professor. And I'm like, well, what does a professor look like? You know? And so, but then there's some people that, like, as soon as they walk into a room, you're just like, yeah, that's a professor.
Right.
So I feel like some of those people, they've had a hard time adapting. And for me, it's like, that's like one of the people that I idolize, like, the most in so many different fields are the ones that, like, continue to, you know, adapt. Like, you know, Elvis and Diamond Dallas Page and Prince, and, you know, there's so many people, like, in music and in comic books, Frank Miller, like, all these people that, like, went from writer to artist to, from singer to from songwriter to singer, you know, like, all these people that are willing to, like, adapt and change and grow, those are the people that I look up to the most. So, like, when this happened, I was just like, all right, so time to reinvent myself again. And, you know, I think I've done okay, but there's a lot of people that are having problems with it right now. And as far as students go through the same exact thing, because now those students that used to like to talk a lot in class, they have to type a lot, and maybe they might not want to type, you know?
Yeah, so that's a shift.
But, yeah, absolutely. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, speaking of which, it's funny, I started doing this format here, just talking to people, getting on, because we had a group that used to meet up and do art shows, do art events, and we would also get together and discuss, hey, what are we doing? How are you coming along with your social media? How are you getting along with your painting, or how are you selling your art? Whatever. You know, there were these little, basically, mastermind meeting groups that we have just on art.
Yeah.
And of course, when coronavirus hit, then we weren't doing as much of that. So we started, of course, chatting online. And at one point, I was like, you know what? Let's just get into a little chat room and have a little discussion. We did that. It actually worked out pretty well, but I didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
A little while later, I was sitting down and just, you know, saying, well, gosh, I want to get something out. I need to do something. But honestly, I really didn't feel like painting physically, because I'm so used to taking my physical paintings out into the world and showing people that I don't want to say I lost the will to do it, but something had changed. And that whole process was interrupted. And, you know, people don't get how much their whole routine changes when you have a lot of little changes.
Yep.
They just kind of
Absolutely.
think, hey, just go online, but your whole rhythm is off. So,
Oh yeah.
so I'm taking out my paintbrushes, and I'm like, I just don't want to. I'm not in the rhythm to do this, even if I want to paint. What's going
Yeah.
on? So then, whenever something like that happens to me, I jump in and start doing a lot of different things to see what resonates with me. And when I'm doing these different things, it's just, well, hey, let me try this out. Let me try this new food out, or let me take a nap at this time instead of this time, whatever. But one of the things I did was, instead of recording something and editing it, then putting it out there on the internet, I said, well, let me just go live. And I was thinking about doing Instagram, but that seemed like, whatever, Instagram live, everybody's doing that, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just decided, well, let me go on Facebook Live. And like right when I started, I was like, holy crap, these are actually my friends and family and people who know me jumping on here saying hi, they're seeing me. And it had a totally different vibe from Instagram, which is more randoms and business people and people who connected with me on a professional level. So when I got on Facebook Live, I was like, wow, this is really more natural. I mean, I'm not plugging Facebook here for any reason, but that's just how it happened. So now, I actually think I want to make this part of my routine, and then I'll spin this off to something else. You know, at some point I may move to YouTube or whatever. But yeah, that's how I got started, and so I put out feelers to see who could jump in and talk when, and obviously your name came up because now you're here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll definitely keep this going, man. But
You should. I mean, this was a lot of fun. I think you're super articulate. You know, you've got a great story. You know, it's like first off, like just for your friends to kind of keep tabs on you was fun. But then two, you know, you end up learning people that may not that may be friends with you on here may not know nearly as much as they want to. This is a good way for that to happen. So I would definitely keep doing it. And see, the thing is too, like even though you're not painting and you're doing this is still creative. You know?
exactly.
So this may make you want to paint. You know? So it's just a part of your adaptation.
Totally. And that's what I take in any of these kind of events like that. And that is a very New York thing to say. You know, you got to adapt because you motherfuckers just that's how you do it. So
Oh yeah.
when I move to New York, when I ever do that, then I'll have that part down. Just be ready to adapt.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
So I don't want to hold you too long. I know you got the baby in the background, sleeping. I think, but
Yeah.
so I don't want to hold you up too long. But I definitely want to thank you for this right here. Oh, we did have a question that came through about your thoughts on games that are coming out this year or right now, just in general, I guess.
I feel like I get a lot more excited when I hear like pitches from indie companies now that I do from like first party companies and like big AAA game companies, because I feel like I don't feel like companies take as big chances as they used to. You know, it's like I was just writing something about this game that came out on PS1 called Rogue Trip, and it's kind of like it was developed by the same people that did Rogue Trip. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They did it was the same team that did Twisted Metal 1 and 2, and then they ended up getting bought by GT Interactive, so like, Sony obviously owned the rights to Twisted Metal, so instead of doing Twisted Metal 3, which they couldn't, they did this game called Rogue Trip, and it's basically like Twisted Metal with some like mission-based objectives. It's really cool. But one of the cars is a hot dog car, like they're basically like making fun of like the Oscar Mayer like wiener or whatever.
Sounds familiar, very familiar. Okay, go on.
And what happened was Oscar Mayer filed a cease and desist. So like they were expecting the game to sell around like 600 to 750,000 copies, but by the time the cease and desist came, they only sold 375,000 copies. So the game got taken off the shelves and stuff like that. But what ended up happening was Sony saw that these guys were still making games and that they were improving on the Twisted Metal formula. And Twisted Metal 3 and Twisted Metal 4 were developed by a completely different team. Those games sucked. So now those guys leave GT Interactive and they start Incognito, and we know what happened with Incognito, some fucking fantastic games on the PS2, PSP, you know. So this like little game that had some balls on it, like really laid the foundation for 10 to 15 amazing games that influenced the rest of the PlayStation 2 era. So I miss days like that, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't see many ideas like now from like AAA companies where I'm like, oh my god, it's like 2K announced the other day that they're going to do their own game, and it's like that's supposed to get me excited.
Yeah, it was definitely a different time, and I remember the vibe in the air, just about what you could do, what you couldn't do, what people were expecting. And I actually remember at one point, 3DO was a very interesting company in the sense that you had the building we were in had 4 different floors. The second building we were in, actually, but yeah, the second building we were in had 4 different floors, and the second floor was developers. The third floor was like marketing, sales, some other guys, and then the 4th floor was developers. So no one really took the elevators. Everybody just kind of ran up and down the stairs, and we always wanted to see what the other departments were doing. So when we'd go up to the second floor and we'd run across the marketing guys, and marketing and sales, more of the ladies are going to be over there. So you just kind of stopped and hung around there, and you're hanging around their coffee area anyway, just because they're over there.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that the marketing guys had that vibe too. They're like, they'd hear an idea and they're like, oh man, we could totally spin that into this and this and this, and can we see what you guys are working on, and hey, let's get an artist over here. Now you hear the marketing from the marketing guys, more like it's like marketing catch up now. It's like everything is pretty much the same. And it's like, well, okay, this game is going to have these guys with these guns, they're going to go do this and blah blah blah. And they try to sell a gimmick, but it's not as it's a gimmick. It's not as fresh as a a different way of playing a game. You don't get ideas like Portal or whatever every day of the week. That could just come around and kind of change the way you think about things. And Portal probably wasn't the best example, but you get what I mean.
No, absolutely.
So yeah,
it's one of the reasons why I focus so much on older games or indie games, because those, I feel like the indie game scene is where a lot of those ideas are coming from now. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you are definitely a historian. I will say you know much more about the movement and the machine of the industry, and where it's going, where it's been, far more than a lot of people I know. And you speak more intelligently about it. I've been in the trenches, and I can definitely tell you some things about what was going on inside. But what I really want to do is I really want to set up another conversation at some point down the line with you.
Hell yeah.
And
absolutely.
yeah, so we could definitely do this in the future. Really get some interesting things out. I didn't have my whole interview mind ready, but I jumped in and wanted to do this, so I totally appreciate
you're
it.
Great.
Well, before we start wrapping up, is there anything else that you wanted to get out there? You say you've got a couple books coming. Which one's coming next?
So the original book came out The Minds Behind the Games came out in April of 2018. The Minds Behind Adventure Games came out in December of 2019. Probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks, The Minds Behind the Sports Games is going to come out. And then The Minds Behind the Shooter Games is probably, if my past experience with my publisher serves true, will either be out in December or January of 2021. Then I signed the contract for The Minds Behind the Sega Genesis games in January, and I've got 39 games confirmed for that. So that's going to be the biggest book that I've done so far. And you're going to be the first person that I've ever told this, but 2 weeks ago I started another book.
Oh, wait, hold on. Is this an exclusive?
This is an exclusive. Yes,
oh, here
absolutely.
we go.
So 2 weeks ago I started The Minds Behind the Sony PlayStation games, and I have 20 games confirmed already in 2 weeks. So it's been it's been pretty insane, and I've already written like 5 or 6 chapters already of a PlayStation 1 book, like Twisted Metal, Road Trip, NHL '98, Spider-Man, the Treyarch one. There's some really heavy hitters in the PS1 book already, so I'm super excited. So the coronavirus has been like awful, but I've had so much more time to write, and I don't want to make any excuses for myself, I've just been busting my ass.
Love it. Totally love it.
So that's why when you go on Facebook and I say things like, no excuses ever, it's like I'm sitting here and it's like I'm waiting for my wife to give birth and I'm fucking exhausted and I'm not sleeping and my daughter wants me to spend time with her and I'm playing with her and I'm trying to be the best dad that I can be, but at the same time too, like I'm teaching, 3 hours a day, I'm writing 5 or 6 hours a day, I'm the one that's doing like all the grocery shopping in my house, so it's like I don't make any excuses for shit. So it's like I'm super focused on making this a brand and continuing like this book series for a really long time, and like that's what I think is the coolest part. So it's like I can do genres, I can do consoles, like I can do all sorts of stuff, and it's just like something that like I never want to stop doing. I'm also like a couple of chapters deep into a wrestling book that is structured very similarly to the minds behind the games. It's like each chapter is just me talking with a wrestler, so that's going to take me a little bit longer to do because I want to pick the right combination of wrestlers, and that's going to take a lot longer, but like that's something down the pipe that I'd like to do. I submitted a comic book manuscript to Image Comics like 2 weeks ago. I'm doing voice acting on 3 different games. I'm writing the story for 2 separate games, so it's like I'm doing a ton of shit right now. I'm trying to make those things happen.
I love it, and I will say what you're doing with the Mind Behind the Game series is minds plural behind the game series is really really strong. I definitely want to see it. Branch out's not the right word, but as something big gets big like this, it starts to spread and people start seeing it from different angles. It'll definitely be a joy to watch this thing grow and develop and build into whatever it's going to become. So I'm totally here for it, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. Like writing the afterword for the shooter book. I mean, I loved it. Like just to have you. I mean, like I wanted you in my first book. Like I sent you a pitch on Facebook, like in like 2017 or whatever for Rockstar Table Tennis because I adored that game so much. And to like eventually get you for book 3 was like freaking awesome. I remember talking to Tony Barnes and I'm just like, I got Rockstar Table Tennis in the sports book. I'm like, yes. And so like just having you to be a part of this just makes it a lot more special than it would have been otherwise. Like I mean, you've done some amazing work.
That you know what, for our next conversation, whenever that happens, I definitely want to get into table tennis. There are a lot of interesting stories there, and all positive. I don't have anything bad to say about the game industry. I know a lot of people are looking for juicy kind of insights on Rockstar Games or anything like that. But that's not my personality. But nevertheless, there are still a lot of good stories that came out of that studio, that place, that are just phenomenal. I mean, when you have an institution like that that's making Grand Theft Auto, table tennis, Smuggler's Run, even if you want to go back that far, that are making all these kind of groundbreaking things, you're going to get some good stories. So, that's definitely something we got to talk about on the next time.
Sure.
Cool. Well, all right, man. I'm going to wrap it up here. Definitely thank you for your time.
No problem, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to hang out in the chat for a little bit, but we can end the conversation call here, and then I'll hit you back up on Messenger at some point.
Cool. If you want, I could put the link in there if people want more information.
Yeah. Go ahead. And, you can drop whatever links you want in there.
Awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much. I'm gonna see if I can get a half-hour nap in before my daughter wakes up.
Yep. All right, Patrick. Thanks.
Take care, man. All right. Bye.
So that was Patrick Hickey Jr., academian, writer, author, teacher, with the Minds Behind the Games books. I tried to get him earlier, and I didn't because all the craziness going on that he's juggling magnificently. But now he called me up and said, hey, I had a little time. Let's see if we can do something. So that's why there was really no notice for this interview. So we were able to get to talking about some things, and have a good little conversation. Hope everything is technically okay on everyone's end. I didn't get a chance to set everything up properly, but it all worked out. So we're going to be doing these every so often. Whether I do them solo or whether I talk to somebody, we'll find out as we go along. This podcast, this podcast, I'm going to go ahead and call it that and start putting it through an RSS feed. Definitely a great one, y'all. So we're going to have this podcast going concurrently with the 8-Bit Cubist podcast, and that's going to be its own other thing because it's its own art project, and I wanted to separate that from what I'm doing as an artist, a developer, creator, whatever. I don't have a name for the podcast yet for this, but I want to call it, actually, if you see that board right there, those are just a scribbling of ideas that I have for all the names of what we're going to do, what we're going to call this podcast. I think I'm going to call it the ADD podcast. Art, Design, Development, something with Mr. Benja. All right, definitely thank everybody who popped in for this. Sorry I missed Mother's Day, but this all worked out. And before I forget, Patrick, happy Mother's Day to your wife, and good luck with everything. And everybody watching, if there's anything you want me to talk about, let me know. Be sure to like the page, and if you know anybody else who's interested in this, share the page with them. And that is all for now. Thank you very much. See ya.